Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Unconfined Conversations with Ryan and Steve. I'm Ryan, this is my main man Steve, here for episode 11, here in the Unconfined Conversation studio. Steve, a lot of things are going on in the world right now, not the least of which is the Olympics. Have you watched any of the Olympics at all?
Very little.
Very little.
Mm-hmm.
I have too, admittedly. I've watched very little. I've caught major highlights, of course, on social media and things like that. But, the Olympics were a big thing in our house growing up. It was like the must-see TV because, we didn't have cable. We didn't have any of that other kind of stuff. But, the USA is doing great. So congratulations to Team USA and all of their victories thus far. It's also getting to be springtime almost. Some days it feels like that a little bit.
It's in the air.
It's definitely in the air. We've had a couple nice days, a little bit of chill here and there, and today just a little bit of snow and ice, but, nothing really crazy. But, we're nearing the end of February, and, we're approaching March. The first day of spring officially is the 20th of March. And the only reason I know that is because that was my mom's birthday.
Nice.
Of all things, right? So spring is approaching. And when we think about spring and the changing of the seasons, really spring is signaling the new rebirth, the new growth that's happening in nature. It's a new beginning because during the winter time, we see lots of bare trees, bare ground. Everything seems to have died off. But in the spring, things start to grow again, and things begin a new life. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking today a little bit about, is a new beginning in every person's life who is able to leave prison and get out on parole. And the specific thing that we're going to talk about today is the parole officer and also the condition of just being on parole and what that looks like for each individual, because this is really a topic that we really haven't even talked about thus far in this series.
Right.
But it's definitely an important one that we feel that we need to talk about, because there are things that can make being on parole successful or unsuccessful for the individual. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And so the first thing I think that we should talk about is, when we were in prison, we heard about what parole looks like. And where did we hear it from? We heard it from people who violated their parole and came back into prison. And so then they would tell us stories about their experience being on parole and what that looked like.
Very negative.
Very negative. And usually that would be, this was my experience. My parole officer was very hard on me. They were big brother, always watching me. I was underneath their thumb, whatever way that you want to describe it. We usually heard all of those things. People saying, well, I couldn't go anywhere. I had to go see them every week. They would come to my house all the time. They would do all these things. And so for guys like you and I, who were in for over 2 decades, are you refreshed, by the way? Oh my gosh. This guy.
That was a throwback to Wayne's World, but keep going. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Later, there'll be some room for party time, excellent adventures. It's so dumb. America, we apologize. But, we heard all these stories and these experiences from people throughout all these years. Well, for people like you and I who were in for over 2 decades, we heard these stories over and over and over and over again. And when you hear something over and over again, repetitively for years, we start to believe that that's the truth of the matter, that is exactly how things are going to be. So I want to ask you, when you started to get close to your parole date, when you were going to get out of prison, you, of course, had heard all of these stories. What were your thoughts 5 years away from parole, 2 years away from parole, 1 year away? How did your thought process view parole and what that looked like the closer that you got to your out date?
Yeah, for me, I guess I'd say right at about the 5 year mark is when I started thinking about getting out. Like I've spoken about that on here. Somebody encouraging me positively to start gearing my mind up for that. So 5 years, and then 4 years, and 3 years, and 2 years, and so on and so on. Like my brother said here, it's fighting that negative voice, because we did hear it, So in my mind, I approached that day, I think, with this concern that I'm going to need to make sure that my parole officer knows about my every single move, And I remember shortly after I got out, I knew I had a curfew. And I remember knowing that I was going to go past that curfew by maybe 5 or 10 minutes because my family got lost in this new town, new to them, new to me too. And so I immediately called somebody that I know I was accountable to at the halfway house. And they just said, relax, you're okay. And so then we could slow down a little bit and ended up getting back, I'd say 15 minutes late. But little things like that, my mind naturally assumed, based upon those people's report coming back in, being parole violators themselves, my mind tended to gravitate towards that and say, well, they're going to violate me for being late for my curfew. Just little things like that.
A lot of fear and trepidation.
Sure.
Right? And probably a little bit of anxiety because a lot of it was just fear of the unknown, right? We didn't know from any firsthand account. We didn't experience it to be able to form our own opinions about it. We were just forming our opinions based off of hearsay. And, admittedly, like I had the same concerns for sure, that I'm going to have to let my parole officer know every single move that I make. Hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Hey, I'm going to the gas station. Hey, I'm, whatever, et cetera, because that's what I thought that I needed to do. And, when I got out, I took the mentality of, I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to make sure that I put my best foot forward, and I'm going to be as transparent as what I possibly can, right? Hey, I need to go here. Hey, I'm going to be a little bit late, et cetera, et cetera. And, my experience at the halfway house, I think, was very similar to yours, where a few times I was going to be a little late, but I just called somebody that I was accountable to and said, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I'm going to be 10 minutes late. And they said, it's no problem, right? As long as you called us and let us know, like it's no big deal, right? And I think that kind of started to set the tone a little bit of, hey, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. Maybe there's a little bit of grace here, right? But that grace is only there because of being proactive. Am I right?
Yeah. I'd say one of the things I've talked with numerous guys getting out, and especially in that setting, in a halfway house setting, like I'm quick to say, communication is key. You make sure you're communicating to these people here. You have their number. You have a phone. You make sure you communicate to them, and they will walk the extra mile with you to ensure that you don't return to prison, to ensure that you don't make a stupid choice that's going to ultimately end with your parole being revoked. That's the role of this particular halfway house, which, by the way, is Kingdom Boundaries Prison Aftercare.
Shout out to Kingdom Boundaries Prison Aftercare, and to Jeff, who we owe a huge debt, and Tim and the whole staff there. They were just wonderful to us in our as I mentioned earlier, kind of this rebirth, right, into this new beginning, where we were trying to, plant ourselves in this new world, in this new beginning, and to be able to grow. And that little bit of grace was like water to a seedling. It allowed us to kind of take root a little bit and feel like we can open up just a little bit. The other sort of feedback that we received that allowed us to open up even a little bit more was really from our parole officers.
Sure.
Of course, everybody that's out on parole has a parole agent or a parole officer that is responsible for overseeing your supervision. And I think both of us had, first of all, we were very blessed with who we received.
Absolutely.
And who we received, those parole agents had the mindset of, you know what, this guy did his time. He's trying to integrate himself into society. How can I help him to be able to start his new life?
Right.
Can I give him confidence? Can I be a counselor to him? Can I be a confidant? Can I be someone who gives him reassurance? Can I be someone who can be in his corner where he doesn't feel like I'm going to be breathing down his neck, where he doesn't feel like I'm going to be, to use a movie reference here, the man behind the curtain.
Right.
Because I don't think we ever really felt that way. But that's exactly what we heard.
Yeah.
For all those years in prison, we heard those types of messages, that this is the way your parole officer or your parole agent is going to be with you. And it just never really was that way with us.
Right.
My parole officer was incredibly graceful and encouraging and guiding. I had questions about how do I do things. He's like, oh, well, let me help you. That was incredibly helpful. And I felt like it was more of a partnership than it was like it was in prison with authority figures.
Sure.
Where you reported to somebody, where they had this authority figure like when they were above you. And I never really got that feeling. And I don't think you ever really got that feeling from your agent either. But
with the exception of the expectations that
Correct.
I think every parolee has. So they sit down and walk through that whole list of things with you. But other than that,
so just very briefly talk about that just a little bit, about when your parole officer or your parole agent conveys their expectations to someone who's on parole. Explain a little bit about like what that is.
So I'll start out by saying that everybody's situation is different. So every person who comes out of incarceration, their restrictions or their freedoms are all different, basically case by case basis. And so for me in my situation, my parole officer just ensured that I understood each and every one of the requirements, the rules, these things are going to get you violated. If you abide by them and don't do them, then you'll be free. You have nothing to worry about. Made sure I knew the date and time and place for when my next meeting was. So much so that they gave me a card and encouraged me to put it in my calendar. Like
a reminder card or an appointment card.
Yeah. And so things like that, because you hear about those meetings. I missed a parole officer meeting and, I was violated. Now, there's probably a whole nother story to that. But in my mind, I don't want to miss that date. And I think one time I was a little unclear. So I went ahead and called. And I think I was right. Like, hey, yeah, your parole meeting is coming up or whatever was being said. And just what you were saying earlier about being proactive, just being proactive, like helped alleviate my own anxiety about that, that I don't want to miss that meeting. So,
yeah, and that proactiveness on your part and on my part and others too, people who just are proactive on the side of like the parolee. Talk a little bit about what that proactiveness does to how the parole agent then starts to view the person who's on parole.
Sure. I would say it probably conveys to the parole officer the attitude of, I want to be responsible. I want to be accountable. That's a good word. I want to be accountable. And so I'm going to be checking in. I'm going to be filling out my paperwork. I'm going to be fulfilling my requirements that I've agreed to, I think it conveys, and I'm hesitant to use the word trust because I understand the nature of a parole officer and a parolee. So I understand that. But I would say it's probably closest to the word trust, to where, hey, I'll give you my situation. I've been out just a little over 3 years, and I forget when it was, but I was elated and happy and joyful when I was given the news by my parole officer that I'm on indirect supervision, and which just means I have a little bit longer of a leash, a little bit more freedom than I did before. So
that means that you don't have to go and see them as often. You may not even have to go in to the office anymore. There's less contact between you and the parole department.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which was earned, and I'll be quick to say that because I think there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say, oh, there's a violent criminal, violent person out there, that is on indirect supervision. And I don't want to alarm anybody by that. I'm certainly still accountable to my parole officer. I have her number on my phone very clearly, who she is. That way I know exactly who I need to text in the event of something that happens, contact with the police, a car accident, anything like that I think they just need to know about. I'm quick to share that via text or the paperwork that I'm required to fill out monthly.
Yeah, and I would echo what you just said as far as how proactiveness and showing a desire that, hey, I want to follow the rules that are specific to me. I want to follow the general rules. I want to fulfill my obligations, whether it's classes that are required, whether it's financial obligations that you have to meet. For those of you who don't know, you have to pay to be on parole. There's a monthly fee. So being proactive with all those things and putting your foot forward with those conveys to your parole officer, hey, this guy is trying his very best. He wants to be successful. He wants to earn my trust, whatever that word may mean. And so then once that starts to happen, then that's when you start seeing this longer leash, this little bits of trust that are being shown to you. Because at first, they don't know you. They don't know you from anybody. I know who I am, and you know who you are. And we know that the great personal changes that we've enacted upon ourselves throughout the years of our incarceration, who that makes us now. But they don't know us.
Right.
So we have to be able to then show them, hey, this is who we are. And when we start to do that and we start to earn more trust, more privileges, less restrictions, that's when you can start to see that your parole agent is actually, in some instances, if not maybe most instances, is actually working towards you being successful. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you be more confident in your life. They want to see you go out and just live your life like a normal person. And whether they say that in those exact words or whether they show that with their actions towards you, in most cases, I think that's what the attitude is, which is not the attitude that we heard about for all those years that we were in prison. We heard just the opposite, that they're out to get you, they're trying to put you under their thumb, they're going to, be an ever watchful oversight on you, that they're going to make things incredibly hard on you. And the reason why I let out with that at the beginning of this episode was that when we heard about these accounts, it was from people who had violated their parole. And based off of our experience thus far with how our parole officers have engaged with us, we've then also been able to see how those same parole officers engage with others who are not being proactive.
Right.
Those who are not putting their best foot forward. Those who are pushing the limits, towing the line, if not crossing the line, when it comes to the rules and guidelines of their parole. So then that's when you can see a different type of interaction between the parole officer and the parolee. So then it started to click, I think, for both of you and I. Oh, this is why we heard all these messages, because these guys were not doing the things that they were supposed to be doing. Hence, why they violated their parole.
Right.
So then I think, that's when it really started to make sense and become very clear that, hey, parole can be exactly how you make it. It's not on the agent.
No.
It's absolutely on the individual.
I agree.
To dictate the pace and the type of interaction that you have with your parole officer.
Right. No, that's well put. And such a good attitude. And I think the fact that we can have this conversation and it goes to benefit the inmate who's currently incarcerated, because Lord willing, a family member or a loved one would hear something like this and start to encourage their loved one on the inside to, hey, it's not as bad as you thought. There is going to be a freedom that you'll have to earn. I would say that I am, and you could probably say the same for yourself, but we both earned the freedoms that were afforded on parole. And we don't take those things lightly, and we don't take them for granted. And we're definitely just keeping the conversation going, but ensuring that families know that it's not the picture that's being painted by the people who are in the inside who have been violated on parole. Believe our report.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're speaking about it in this way, because I think a lot of family members and friends, I think they have a lot of those concerns about what's parole going to look like for my loved one. Can I take what they have to say at face value? Can I believe them? But I think based off of what you've said, what I've said in our examples, but also many, and we should absolutely say this, there are many, many others who are just like you and I, who have followed the rules, been proactive, and who have become very, very successful on parole, and have great relationships with their parole officer and their parole agent, to the point where, as you said, we absolutely know that we're on parole. Like, there's no doubt about it. You're still accountable to somebody, and so am I. And it'll continue to be that way until the end of our parole term. But you can get to a point where some days it doesn't even feel like you're on parole. You just go to work, come home, make your supper, hang out in the backyard, go fishing, go do whatever you do in your life. And being on parole is like the last thought in your mind, right? You still know that you're on parole. You still know that there's rules and restrictions and all that kind of stuff, but you can get to a point where you feel like you're really, really, truly free. And that's such a great feeling. And that feeling can come from doing things the right way when you're on parole.
Right.
And, what we can talk about a little bit here is when you get to that point and you've done the things that you're supposed to, you've fulfilled your obligations. For those of who are listening and for who are watching us right now, they may not even be aware that there are opportunities afforded. Well, I shouldn't say afforded, but there's opportunities available for people who are on parole to be able to shorten that length of their parole. And it can come through fulfilling all those obligations, paying your fines, paying your parole fees, finishing your classes, doing well, no reports, no incidences, all these kind of things. You and I we both have a laundry list of people that we know that have gotten off parole 2 years early, 5 years early.
Earlier than they expected.
Which is just a wonderful thing.
It is.
And the thing is, none of it has to do with the parole agent, the Board of Pardons and Paroles. It all has to do with the individual and how they perform on their parole. I think that's the key thing here, is that a person's success or failure on parole, that label of responsibility can't be put onto anybody except for the individual.
Right.
It's up to you if you're going to be successful on your parole or not. And obviously, people have different struggles. They have different situations going on in their lives. There's no doubt about it. And some people will struggle mightily. I know somebody right now that's on parole. They desperately want to do so well on their parole. And for the majority part of their parole, they've been doing so well at restructuring their life, how they view themselves, how they view their freedom. But yet, at least in this individual's particular instance, addiction has really become a thing. And so that has kind of held them back just a little bit, right? So, I mean, we want to acknowledge that, everybody's situation is different, as you mentioned before. And people have much different types of struggles, whether it's addiction, whether it's family issues, whether it's whatever it may be. But even despite that, even when somebody does struggle, the parole agent can still be that person who says, you know what, you messed up, or you struggled, or you tripped a little bit, but you know what, you told me about it, and you said, hey, I want to do better, so I'm going to work with you. Just being forward with them and saying, hey, I messed up, but I need to do better. How can you please help me a little? That's part of their job too. And most of them will be there and say, you know what? I'm glad that you told me. I'm glad that you feel like you can talk to me about things that you're struggling with, and I want to try to help you. And, when you can have that type of relationship with your parole agent, that's when, things can become a lot easier. And you can just feel more confident that, hey, maybe I'm struggling a little bit, but it's not going to be the end of the world.
Right. A pastor that I know very well, and I don't know if this is original to him or not, but he always teaches, he says, it's never too late to make your next right step.
That's such a great quote.
It's a fantastic quote. And the reason why I say that is it's easy to be in this life on parole feeling that things are against you, and start to feel like, well, maybe I should just make a decision, that will maybe line my pockets a little bit better, or maybe I can, skirt the system and get by and go back to my old lifestyle or my old way of making money. Instances like those, maybe I'm coming up short on bills and this and that, and maybe I can just figure out a way to make some fast money. It's so easy to go down that path, make those decisions, and then eventually say, well, I'm already going this far. And I say it again, it's never too late to make your next right step. So in that instance, this pastor teaches men and women week after week, to turn from those decisions, make better decisions, and keep going in that direction of positive, of your ultimate freedom, being off of parole and probation and everything that that entails, and just putting this whole episode, this whole chapter behind you.
I think that's really well put. It's never too late to make your next right move. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it can be discouraging when we stumble, mm-hmm. right? But when you've been in prison, for a lot of people who are in prison, they've lived their life one way. Mm-hmm. And that one way has led them to jail, probation, prison, back out, jail, et cetera, et cetera. Learning how to walk differently means that sometimes you're going to stumble, mm-hmm. right? It's just part of it. And so to not be discouraged to the point where you throw your hands up in the air and say, you know what, just whatever, but instead to say, you know what, I did struggle a little bit. I'm going to be honest about it. I'm going to try to have a good relationship with my parole agent who can hopefully help me, maybe get me into a class, maybe get me a mentor, maybe whatever it is, so that you can start taking those next steps that are necessary, mm-hmm. In order to continue to improve upon who you are, your decision making, your thoughts, your beliefs, all those other kind of things, right? So what should the message be for our listeners and our viewers when it comes to what parole can look like and what the relationship with a parole agent can look like? What do you think? What is the message that we need to, or that we would like to encourage our listeners and our viewers to have when it comes to that? Because they're the ones that are going to be conveying, this type of information to their loved ones who are inside. But they also, need reassurance themselves too, I think, about what that looks like, because many of them just don't know.
Mm-hmm. I think heed the wisdom that we're giving. Hear the report from those who are being successful on parole, so our voices today, and those who have gone on to no longer be on parole. You never hear about them. You never read them in the newspapers or anything like that. Take their report and learn from it. And as you prepare to get out, I'll say this because I know this happened in my life. Your reputation can precede you. And in my instance, doing well while inside and living the life that I lived while on the inside of the prison system, that preceded me. And my parole officer, the very first day I met him, he shook my hand, we sat down, we talked, and then he said, well, I heard from your case manager who is on the inside, and the only way a case manager would really hear about a person's life is from the officers, because the officers are the ones who interact with inmates day to day. Case managers, not as much, more towards kind of the end of their sentence. So I think there's just something to say about that your behavior can make the difference. And this is just my guess, okay? This is not accurate. I'll just say that. But I'd venture to say that your behavior on the inside probably will, can, and does make a difference in which parole officer you get.
I would agree with that. I mentioned it before. Your parole officer had never met you before, doesn't know anything about you, except what your case manager conveys to them, because they have a line of communication. Because once you're assigned, every inmate, every single inmate that gets out on parole, their case manager talks with their parole officer, and they can convey to them, hey, this guy has hardly any write-ups, he has a good reputation, officers get along with him, he's easy to deal with, etc., etc. Or, hey, this guy's in the shoe all the time, he's always, getting in fights, he does this and this and this and whatever else. That reputation will then be conveyed to your parole officer. So now they have at least a little snapshot of what they can expect. So then that can automatically set their tone for how they start interacting with you, right? Because they know kind of just a little bit, kind of what they're getting into, when it comes to the individual.
Right.
So I think that's a great point that you just made, that your interaction and relationship with your parole agent can absolutely start even before you even meet them.
Agreed.
Right? It can start from the inside. So, as we mentioned in the very, very beginning, with this new spring season and this indication of this new beginning and this new growth, that's absolutely what parole can be. It can be a chance to plant yourself in fresh soil and begin to grow into the person that you hope to aspire to be, the person that your family desires you to be, maybe even, I dare say, needs you to be, and that society as a whole can say, you know what, we're going to benefit from this individual because of who they are, how they're behaving themselves, the way that they're negotiating this new part of their life. And so I would just say in closing that parole is absolutely going to be what you make of it.
Sure.
And it always will be. And to just give encouragement to our listeners and our viewers that parole can be a very, very positive thing in someone's life. So encourage your loved ones who are still inside. Encourage your loved ones who are outside and who are currently on parole, that they can put their best foot forward, that they can be proactive and have a wonderful experience while they're on parole, just like Steve and I have. So make sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms. Check us out on Facebook and on YouTube and now on TikTok. Also check us out on our audio platforms like Apple Music? And see, this is what happens when you turn 44, folks. I just turned 44 last week, and now all of a sudden my memory's getting shot, right? So Amazon Music,
we'll put them on the bottom.
Spotify, look at the bottom.
That's why I always go like this.
Yeah, don't listen to my words. Check us out on all our social media platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe to Unconfined Conversations, and drop a comment down below if you have anything that you'd like to say about what we talked about today or about any of our other episodes and what we've talked about here on the podcast. So,
here's a comment right here.
Oh.
The brother needs to get a bigger shirt, they said.
Well, we encourage all sorts of comments here. And just because, I realize that I kind of look like a blueberry here in a way. Did I get this from Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory? Is that why I'm looking this way? Keep those comments coming. We love to hear them. We want to hear from all of you about anything that we have to say. And if you feel like, there's something that you want to talk to us personally about, we'll put our email address in there and you can contact us privately and we can have a discussion about whatever you'd like. So for Steve and myself, that's it for this episode of Unconfined Conversations. We'll see you next time.